Always, I want to thank you guys for coming out and covering Penn State football. We appreciate you guys being here. Feel like you blink and we're back. It's gone quickly. I think, when you talk about winter workouts, spring ball, summer training, training camp, I think we have maximized it as much as we possibly can. The new rule changes, I think we've done a really good job preparing for some of the technology changes as well as some of the rule changes that have allowed us to make adjustments and make adjustments quickly. I think the new rule changes in terms of what you're able to do with the players and what you're able to do with the staff over the last couple of years, I think has really helped. If you're in a position to hire a new coordinator or a new position coach, you're able to get a lot of work done in that period of time. So all those things have been valuable. But training camp was good. It was competitive. It was physical. It was tough, like it was designed to be. And, now we're in a position, I think, over the last week and a half, we've cut back to make sure that the guys feel good, that their bodies feel good, and that their legs are back. And now getting into a traditional game week. We did, as you guys know that have covered us for a while, we do have like the bonus West Virginia practices at the end of training camp, but now we're obviously in a traditional game week. So looking forward to it, excited about it, and look forward to answering you guys' questions.
We'll start with Rich Scarcella with the Reading Eagle, and Frank Bodani, you're on deck.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
Hi, Rich. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, thanks. James, with the news this morning, I was wondering what your reaction was to Pat's contract extension, and what does his presence mean to you and the program going forward?
Well, I think, first of all, I think stability in college athletics and college football has a chance to be a differentiator like probably never before. I think it's always been a differentiator if you look at certain programs across the country, but now I think it's magnified even more with the amount of turnover that you see. So I think that's really important. He knows Penn State. He understands, college athletics, obviously, and the changes that we're under right now. And that stability at the lead position in our athletic department is critical. So I think was strategically the right thing to do. And, we had an ICA department meeting this morning, and he announced it there. And I know a lot of coaches and people are very, very happy about it. I think the biggest thing is we got a man leading the department that is a competitor. And I'm talking about a fierce competitor in everything he does. And that's important. You guys have heard me say before about the importance of having people in, I hate using this expression, but, having somebody in the foxhole with you. And whether that is women's soccer or whether that is fencing or whether that is college football and wrestling, that's important to have somebody that can relate, that understands the challenges, that wants to come up with solutions. One of the things that I think that stood out to me is Pat and Vinny's ability to find solutions for problems that we've had or challenges that we've had for a number of years. And then I think the other thing is even bringing some ideas to the coaches in the department without the coaches having to come up with those ideas. So I think it's really good for the university. I think it's really good for the athletic department. And I think it's the right thing to do strategically for Penn State moving forward. So I'm very, very happy about it.
Frank Bodani, and then Mike Gross, you're on deck.
Hey, good afternoon, James. How are you?
Hey, Frank. I like the new names that we got going on up here. You didn't tell me about that, Greg and Chris.
Very helpful. Very helpful.
Well, I know who you are, Frank, obviously, but still nice to have it up there.
Thank you. So looking at your offense from the end of spring to now, what position group do you think you've seen the most improvement, the most development? How does that look for you, especially going into your opener here?
Yeah, I'd probably say wide receiver, and but I would also say, like, there's a little bit at other positions that you could make the same argument. But I'd say wide receiver. I would say quarterback. I would say offensive line, specifically, obviously, with the offensive lineman that we lost to the NFL last year. I'd say those three positions. I think everybody had, pretty good idea who we were at tight end and who we were at running back. So I would say those three positions, and really the three positions we needed to, right? So there's been a lot of energy poured into those positions. A lot of strategy about how do we position those areas to be the most successful. And so far, I think what we've seen in training camp, not just for myself, but really coaches on both sides of the ball, we all feel that way.
Let's go to Mike Gross and then Mark Wogenrich. You're on deck.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
Hey, Mike. Good. How are you?
Good, thanks. About the in-helmet communication thing, I've heard you talk about what you think of that rule change a couple times, but maybe I missed it. I have not heard you say a whole lot about how implementing it is going. What defensive player, for example, is going to have the helmet? What special teams player is going to have the helmet? How you're finding, are there problems with it? Do you feel like it's working well? Just run down how it's going.
Yeah, so I think we're probably like most people. You're going to have the quarterback and the Mike linebacker, wearing those positions. I think that's how most NFL, teams are run. That's how I think most colleges are going to use it. We started early, which I think has been helpful. DV Sports been really good kind of working with us. We've had them at our last couple scrimmages actually running it for us. Very similar to how it will be on game day. So I think that's been valuable. Doing it with crowd noise has been valuable. Deciding how much are you going to continue to signal, because that's still an issue, right? Are you going to huddle on offense? If you're going to huddle, then the quarterback can communicate with everybody. If you're not going to huddle, how do you still get that communication between 53 yards, from one receiver to the other, essentially. And the same thing with the corner. So having a lot of conversations with NFL teams, some trial and error ourselves, incorporating noise, for our offense when we're on the road, and then our defense for when we're at home, all those things. But I think it's been good. I think it's one of these things, the more times we do it, the better we're at it. We've been doing it at practice, even without the DV Sport people here. And that's been good. It's not the same as, obviously, when DV Sports here and they're cutting the mics off after, 15 seconds left on the clock, those types of things. So there's things that you got to get worked through. It's one-way communication, as you guys know. So sometimes you've made the call. And how does the Mike linebacker let the coach know that he's gotten the call? You think he's gotten the call and he hasn't gotten the call, those things. Because as we all know, these things aren't going to go perfect. So then also, do you have backup plans in terms of signaling or in terms of wristband? All those types of things. Are you okay? Okay, yes. Since COVID, it kind of makes everybody uneasy. Yeah. So, Mike, does that answer your question? Awesome. Thank you.
Let's go to Mark Wogenrich and then Johnny McGonigal. You're on deck.
At least it makes
Hi,
me
James.
uneasy.
How you doing?
Makes me uneasy. Does it make you guys uneasy? Yeah. Mark.
How are you?
Good, buddy. How are you?
Besides uneasy, good. Thanks.
Yeah, we got somebody like coughing over and over and over in here. That brings up a funny story, Mark. I got a second. So me and Manny and Frank Leonard, I think you guys know this, we went and visited the Patriots. And we were there for 2 days, and we're in meetings with their coaches watching film. And Frank Leonard got sick, and he is coughing and coughing and coughing and coughing. And their coaches are looking at him like, hey, buddy, you want to get out of here? And then I'm uncomfortable, and I'm trying to kind of make eye contact with Frank, like, get out of here. Like, I mean, this is Bill Belichick. I mean, the whole staff, right? And finally Frank's like, hey, if you guys don't mind, I'm gonna go back to the hotel. And everybody's like, do we mind? We want you to go back to the hotel. So you just reminded me of Frank Leonard and the Patriot story. Sorry, Mark, go ahead.
Well, I hope they invite you back after that.
Yeah, we've never gotten an invitation since.
You mentioned a couple times, including today, how tough camp was. How did the team emerge physically from training camp, and then where do you stand in terms of injuries that you would classify as season ending?
Yeah, we got some bumps and bruises, like you always do. I would say, really kind of no different. It's funny, you have the meeting every year with the leadership council, and they get to a point where they've had enough, and I think they forget we've had this meeting every year. They're like, Coach, I think we're at a point, and I'm like, yeah, we hear this every year. So it's good feedback to hear for myself and Chuck Losey and for Andrew Nelson as well as running our sports science department. That feedback's really important for me to hear from the players. But we're back in a good place like we have been. You're always going to have a few things that are lingering that we're still waiting to determine. But overall good. And then, when it comes to injuries, the guys that you guys have asked me specifically about that you haven't seen at practice, I'll answer those questions. But in terms of, big picture, I've told players and their parents, like always, I don't make announcements unless I'm asked a specific question. And then I talk to them and their families first to make sure that they're comfortable with it. But I don't think in 11 years I've just come out and made a blanket statement on who's out. And the other thing is, it's hard to say anybody has a season-ending injury. I usually term them as long-term, because even the guys that do have injuries that's going to keep them out for a while, we think a lot of those guys we should have back, for the playoffs or late in the season too.
Last question from Zoom is Johnny McGonigal, and then we'll go to Mark Brennan.
James, how are you?
Good, Johnny. How are you?
Good. You mentioned the offensive line earlier in terms of groups that improved, and specifically to right tackle. How would you describe how the competition during camp went there? And you come out of camp going into week one with a guy who you feel comfortable starting or naming a starter?
Yeah. We feel like, the right tackle battle has been healthy and positive in terms of the amount of work that those two have gotten in. And as you know, that's Donko and that is Rucci. We feel like both of those guys that we can play with and win with, and think both of those guys will play. I know a lot of times you guys are asking for specific answers at this point, but we haven't even told the players at this point, what the rotation is going to be like. That's usually a conversation for Johnny, like yourself, and a lot of the people that have covered us for a while. We usually have that conversation as a staff on Thursday, and then have another conversation at the hotel. And obviously the players at that point would be aware of it as well. But at this point, we're still, practicing and making evaluations to determine rotation. Typically starters, we're in a pretty good place where we're at. But in terms of the rotation of how much guys are going to play, that's really to be determined based on how they practice this week. But I would expect to see a lot of both Anthony and Rucci.
Over on the right, Mark.
How's it going, James?
Good, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing great. You talked about the importance of stability when discussing Pat. This is your 11th year. It's kind of the exception anymore for head coaches. Where do you think the program has made the most progress during your tenure?
Yeah, I'm proud of, really a ton of areas. In terms of our staff, our coaching staff. We're able to hire and retain our staff like we weren't able to before. You don't really see us losing guys for lateral moves anymore. And that used to happen in the past. That's problematic, for the type of program that we want to have. As you guys know, this was stated early on, facility-wise, I didn't think, we were in a great place. There was some resistance to that early on, but we've been able to get all that done, and thank God, because if you didn't get it done before now, you're not going to do it moving forward. The other thing I would say that's kind of more recent is our training table that we have this year, our football-specific training table that we have. I think we're probably the only top 10 program maybe in the country that did not have a football training table. This is our first year for having it, one that's in the facility and part of the football building. I think that's been a huge win for us. So, there's a ton of areas, academically, athletically. I could go on and on. The list I think is significant. But as everybody knows, all that matters now at this point of the season and of the year is how we play. So our focus now is directly on West Virginia and making sure that we're in the best position to go win at a place that I got a ton of respect for. I think Neil Brown's done a great job. I think it's a very, very challenging place to play. I think, for opener, that's going to create some challenges and issues for us. And a team that I think is feeling really, really good about themselves and has a ton of confidence. They won 9 games. They really should have won 10 games. That Houston game was a very, very tough loss. In my mind, they played well enough to win 10 games. They end the season, I think, winning 5 out of their last 6 games, including the bowl game. So they got a lot of positive momentum. The quarterback played really well. So our focus is totally on that right now. But, things that will impact this season, I think the training table is a significant win. Keeping our guys big and strong throughout a challenging season, through a long season and a longer season, and more competitive season with our schedule than maybe Penn State's ever had. That is as big of a win that I've been fighting for 10 years, and we're finally able to get done with Pat and Vinny.
Audrey?
Hi, James.
Hey, Audrey.
You guys have mentioned Liam Clifford a lot of times this preseason as somebody who's kind of turned that corner. What has he kind of done? And then along kind of that same position group, Caden Saunders, what kind of camp did he have?
Yeah, so Liam, and I know you guys hate when I answer things this way, but it's really not one specific area. It's just kind of overall. I think he's more confident. I think he's more comfortable. He's much more consistent, which is what it's all about for all these guys at this level. I look at his college career in a lot of ways like his high school career. He just kept getting better every single year and really had a dominant senior year, had a really good junior year. And I think his college career is going about the same way. He's faster than I think people give him credit for. He's got a big catch radius. And I think he's got a chance to be a playmaker for us this year. He's shown some flashes of that in the past. He comes from a football family, as you guys know, very, very well. It's funny, his parents were at the parent meeting the other day, and, one of the things we try to do is get all the parents to come to the parent meeting, and some of the parents were like, well, I came last year, so I'm not coming this year. And the Cliffords have been to 8 straight parent meetings, which is crazy. I almost had them get up and run the meeting. But he just is really matured. I think maturity in college football has a chance to win you games probably in a similar way that it's impacted college basketball. When you could have an older veteran team or an older veteran position. And I think a lot of those things, show up with Liam, but it would not surprise me at all. And we are anticipating on him having a really good year for us. Caden, I'm sorry. Yeah, Caden's got some bumps and bruises that he's missed some time, so we're working through that right now. And, obviously we're hopeful that he'll be able to go this week and be full go and be able to factor back in for us.
John?
Hey, James.
Hey, John.
Staying with the wide receivers, how many wide receivers do you think you have that are ready to play on Saturday, and how close is that to where you wanted it to be coming into this season?
Yeah, I think, at every position, I think you guys have heard me mention before, you really would like a 2.5 deep, at every position. So if you're talking D tackles, you would like 5. And then I think at wide receiver, when you talk about being an 11 personnel set, having, you're talking about 2 deep at 2 of the positions and then a swing guy in some ways. And I think we're close to that. I think if you look at kind of across the board, a guy like Mekhi Flowers, I think, has really stepped up for us. I think Tyler Johnson has really stepped up for us. I think Anthony Ivy has really stepped up for us. And that is a critical group for us, right? And I'd like it to be for game 1, but the reality is, even if it could be for some of those guys in game 3 and game 4 and game 5, and that's what big discussion we had this morning as a staff meeting, we got to identify guys that we say, okay, they may be not like ready, for whatever reason, physically, mentally, or emotionally today, but these guys, we need them to be ready by game 5 of the season. So, okay, it's obvious, to pinpoint and be able to single out the guys that are ready right now. Who are the guys that we need to make sure that we continue to pour into them and continue to develop them, that they will be ready, come game 5 of the season or somewhere around there. So those are guys that I think really are going to need to step up for us, but have shown enough, that you're excited about what they're going to be. And I would say Tysier Denmark as a new player is in that conversation as well.
Back left, Andrew.
Hey, Andrew.
Hey, Coach. Pat McAfee, obviously a former WVU player. He has a very large platform, and he spent a lot of time last week talking about this game and talking about Penn State. I was curious if you use any of his remarks or anything like that in a locker room setting or with players, or how you deal with kind of outside noises from platforms like that who command such an audience.
Well, first of all, I love Pat McAfee and his energy and enthusiasm for sports and specifically college football. I think he's been good for college athletics and sports in general. I think he's fun, right? I think his ability to speak freely is unique and fun in a lot of ways. For us, it's a fine line, right? I think it's very similar to the old billboard material. I want to make sure that our guys don't say anything and our staff doesn't say anything that creates billboard material, because for some people that motivates them, right? And I want to make sure that I'm not talking out of both sides of my mouth with our staff and our players, because I also strongly recommend our players getting off of social media, especially in season, which is easier said than done. It's amazing how many of them say it, oh, well, I'm good with it. And then a year later, like, yeah, I'm probably going to get off social media this year. I'd like for more of them to take the advice on the front end before it. No different than kind of me handing my phone over to Destiny, during the season, and let her manage those types of things. I think is the healthy way to go. But it's funny, KJ Winston came up to me yesterday at practice and said, Coach, you got a couple things up on the monitors. You're telling us to get off social media, but you got a couple things up on the monitors for us to see. And I said, but here's the difference. When you guys are on social media, you're reading whatever comes in. There's no filter. And what we can do is I can have Destiny or Greg Kincaid or Chris Peterson pull things out to show to me and strategically say, we want to use these things. So there's a filter there. And when I said that to KJ, he goes, that makes sense. That makes sense. So we do a little bit of it, but not a lot of it. For those very reasons. I want to make sure that what we're saying is consistent, but I kind of look at it like old bulletin board material. You know, now we're a true bulletin board material team in terms of we like just cut out what's in the newspaper, where there's some staffs and coaches like get on their computer and create stories that never existed to try to motivate their team. We're not going to do that. There's enough out there that you can find it on your own.
Neil.
Thanks for the newspaper plug. That's cool.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Just curious on when Julian committed, that created a stir, how he's done, what you expect, and have you picked a place kicker?
Yeah, he's done from one extreme to the other, huh? He's done really well. And I think as much as anything, back to that veteran presence that I've talked about, he has brought that to our team. Is another veteran guy that knows college football, that knows our conference, and as you guys know, knows Penn State very well, and we know him very well. So I think that's been a real positive. I was telling him yesterday, I was walking across campus, and some woman came running up to me. She was checking her son into the dorm as a freshman, and she's best friends with Julian Fleming's mom, and came up. We had a nice conversation and took pictures. So it's really cool for him to be back home and playing for Penn State. I think that's a real positive for a lot of reasons. But I think you see the same thing in his play. You know, he understands football. He's got a tremendous football IQ. He's a big, strong, physical, tough guy who we think is going to make the tough catches for us. Has been throughout his career a very physical blocker, also a very good special teams player. And I just think he's one of these guys, again, as a veteran, older player, he's very intentional about what he has to do to be successful and how he practices and how he approached his offseason on the jugs machine and all those things. So I think he's been really good for our receiver room. I think he's been really good for our team, and we're happy he's here. At place kicker, again, you know, kind of very similar to my response about other positions. We got a pretty good idea. We think we got 3 guys that we can win with, but we have not, you know, made any announcements. And this week we'll factor into that. I don't want to say something to you guys that we haven't announced to the team or told the kickers yet. I will say this: all 3 of them come within 2 percentage points on kicks. I'm talking, I want to say it's like 85, 84, and 83% in practice in kicks. So it's not like it's a slam dunk, you know, even my answer to you right now. So, you know, we'll still evaluate that this week and then, you know, make some decisions.